Hi everyone, and welcome to Deep Geek Live. This is a bonus live stream. For those who watch these regularly, my Thursday live stream, my usual Thursday live stream, I was most of the way through it, but then it got interrupted by some kind of YouTube glitch. So I didn't manage to finish off what I was talking about. As always, what I do is I take a topic and I try and work my way through questions that I've got from my patrons, as well as everything that comes up on YouTube as I'm going through it. So what I'm going to do today is try and just pick up where I left off. I don't know how long this is going to last. I've got half a dozen or so questions that I didn't manage to get through. I've made a commitment to my patrons that I will try my very best to answer all of their questions. So this is where we're at. Obviously, if there's anything that comes up, then I will, in the chat, then I will try and pick up on that as we're going through as well. But I just want to take it, see how it goes. Once we got past Euron, then maybe some other things will come up as well. But let's see how we go. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you, Maura Lee. I know you did a super sticker before we went live. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. To Delphi Morphia saying, what a way to perk up our Monday. Thanks, Robert. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And also the Suki Bapswent, thank you so much. Didn't see a question there, but thank you so much for the super chat. If you did have a question, please do drop it down there in the chat, and I'll try and pick it up as we go through. I'm going to start with a couple of super chats from last time that I'm not sure I did complete justice to, so I wanted to have another sort of add on a little bit of extra value for you there. The thing with super chats, I've no idea what people are going to ask. So sometimes I prepared stuff, sometimes I haven't, sometimes my mind just goes a little bit blank. That's just what happens on these things. But I've got a couple I wanted to pick up on and just add a little bit extra on. So Reflective Rambling said, Euron adjacent. You're awesome all the same. Thank you so much. Thoughts on Alysanne Mormont's role, as she's reached out to Asher beyond orders, proven effective in marine combat, and both are in opposition to Euron in one way or another. So Alysanne Mormont is the daughter of Mage Mormont and is the heir apparent to Bear Island. Now, on the show, they simplify as they did. They simplified things very clearly down to Lyanna Mormont was the Lady of Bear Island. She was the head of House Mormont. On the books, in the books, it's not that simple. Mage Mormont was and is the head of House Mormont. She is slightly missing in action at the moment. She's gone, Robb Stark sent her off basically to hunt for Howland Reed. And she's been missing for a couple of books now. Alysanne Mormont, she has basically gone a little bit rogue, and she has ended up in the books up with Team Stannis. She's there looking after Asher. Now, so the question is, what's her role? Now, we saw in the pre-release chapters from the Winds of Winter, Stannis sent her up to Castle Black with, he sent up the person who was sort of pretending to be Arya Stark. And so she's going up to Castle Black now as a sort of a guard. And I think basically she is going to take on some of the role that we saw Lyanna Mormont take on the show. So basically, Lyanna Mormont, if you imagine what she was doing on the show, then her role is kind of spread out. Lyanna Mormont does exist. She did send the letter across to Stannis, but there are a lot more Mormonts actually in play in the books. So she will then go off, Alysanne Mormont is going to go off and be the voice of the Mormonts in the action in the north. So she's going to go to Castle Black. I suspect she'll then come back down to Winterfell in time, and Lyanna Mormont may well stay in Bear Island. We may actually never really see her, but Alysanne Mormont is going to be the Mormont on the scene in the north. So that's my general take on who she is and what she's going to be doing. Stephen Dillon says, what do you think of the parallels between Euron and Aemond Gem-Eye? One eye / use of magic / stealing dragons, etc. So this was a question that I blanked on, to be honest, last time, but I've thought about it a little bit more. Aemond Gem-Eye is Aemond Targaryen. Now, his role was very much around the time of the Dance of the Dragons. We read about him in Fire and Blood. Now, the links across to Euron are, as you say, the fact that he had one eye. He lost his first eye in a family feud with other children. What he was trying to do, he was told that he was the Targaryen, the only Targaryen who didn't currently have either a dragon or a dragon egg. And he was told, hey, come buy Dragonstone. You can choose either a dragon egg or perhaps you want to have a hatchling, just take your pick. And he did that, and he got up to Dragonstone, and he thought, well, why should I have a dragon egg when there's a massive dragon over there, Vagar, who is fully grown and really quite legendary? And he took Vagar. He climbed on Vagar's back, flew around a couple of times, and basically bonded with the dragon. But his cousins effectively decided no, they didn't like that. They got into a fight. He lost an eye, but he dragon, and he later on said, it was a fair trade. I lost an eye, I gained a dragon. He was involved in the Dance of the Dragons, and there's a lot of stuff that sort of goes on with him down at Storm's End. He gets involved in a fight down there. He's one of the first kills, one of the first Targaryen kills is his. And eventually he ends up, there's one of the most epochal fights of the whole Dance of the Dragons takes place above the God's Eye Lake near Harrenhal, where he fights two dragons fight, and he dies. He and his dragon plummet down into the God's Eye Lake, and that is, it's not the final act of the Dance of the Dragons, but it is one of the sort of the final acts that we've got there. So what do we make of this? Well, the link across, as I said, the link across to Euron is definitely there in terms of appearance. His eye is there. The fact that he steals a dragon or takes a dragon is definitely there. Euron is trying to take a dragon, so that's clearly there. The fact that he's mixed up with magic, he gets together with Alice Rivers, who is at Harrenhal, who is supposedly a magician, and the same with the Euron is obviously getting mixed up with magic. And does this mean that he's some kind of archetype for Euron? Well, not necessarily, but the more I think of it, the more I think that there probably will be some kind of dragon on dragon fight above the God's Eye Lake. Now, it makes most sense to me if Euron is on one of those dragons. So, and Euron loses. So I think probably this is one of those things that George R. R. Martin has dropped in there for us to be thinking, yeah, that's a kind of like a hint about the future. We shouldn't take a one-for-one. George R. R. Martin does not believe in cutting and pasting characters from the past into the future. That's not what he's about. What he is about, though, is this idea that history rhymes. And so things that happen in the past kind of echo into the future. That is where George R. R. Martin continually plays. And Fire and Blood, he rushed through it. He produced it in, for him, very quick time. And I am sure that there will be quite a few allusions that we have in that book which will play forward into the story that we've got in the Song of Ice and Fire. So yeah, I think it's a good kind of like archetype kind of idea. Aemond One-Eye does seem to be quite similar to Euron. We shouldn't think that it's exactly the same, but there are some hints about what we're going to be seeing. Okay, so I think I had, let's just double check quickly. There was the super chat from the Suki. I don't think we had a question there. No, I can't see one. So, gents, thank you so much for the super chat saying, what a pleasant surprise to see you here on a Monday. Never get to watch live, but love your channel. Well, this was one of the ideas. I did this deliberately 2 hours early because I know there are some people who don't often get to watch me live. So if you are watching this live because you can't normally see it at this time, welcome. It's great to have you here. What I'm going to try and do going forward is try and about once a month have one other bonus live stream at some other time. My Thursday live streams are pretty set now. I think people know when that is, so I'm going to keep on going with them for the next year or so. But once a month, I will do another live stream, which is at a different time. So please do let me know what times work for you guys. I tried to just move this one forward a little bit because this was the time that worked for me. But I'm very happy to be flexible about when my bonus live stream each month is. And please do let me know. But thank you, gents, for that, or Jens for that. So Andrew K saying, I think he put a sapphire in there eventually, Aemond. Yeah, so Aemond, in his one eye, the one eye that he lost, he put a sapphire in. You're absolutely right. The thing with Euron is that most of the time he's got an eye patch over there, but when he moves the eye patch, it looks dark, it looks malicious. We don't know exactly what's in there. Maybe it's dragonglass, but that's pure speculation. Whatever's in there, it is black and it is brooding and it is nasty. A bit like bit like the man himself, to be honest. Okay, let's go with some questions. As I say, I have half a dozen or so questions from my patrons that I just want to work my way through. Zofia says, with all his Odin, Prometheus, Icarus, and Lucifer symbolism all wrapped up into one, with George R. R. Martin's signature grim, dark flair, it's easy to see the attraction to Euron from the community. However, I can't help feel it won't have much of an impact on the main story, The Long Night 2.0. Do you think Euron is going to be a bit of a damp squib? And Dominic Vaughan also asked, how or do you think he will interact with the Long Night, if at all? Now, my overall take on where Euron is at is that he is currently off the south coast of Westeros, and he is currently trying to summon up as much magic as he possibly can. Now, I saw someone in the chat, apologies, I didn't spot who it was before we went live. I saw someone asking what I thought was a fascinating question. In the pre-release chapter, The Forsaken, the pre-release chapter from The Winds of Winter, Euron basically spends his time, it's all from Aaron's Greyjoy's perspective, the damp hair, and he is there captured by Euron and ends it strapped to the front of one of his boats. And Euron kind of force feeds him this Shade of the Evening drink, giving him visions and all the rest of it. And the question is this just Euron playing with him? Is he just like enjoying the sadistic element of what's going on here? Or is he trying to achieve something? What I think he is trying to achieve through this is provoking the damp hair to pray to his god, to pray to the drowned god. it's already happening, but I think he's trying to push him more and more and more, because when he goes out to battle, he wants all of these priests and magicians and all the rest of it to be trying to do whatever magic they can, summon up their gods, summon up whatever things they can. Euron is just about creating chaos. And what he wants is for Euron Greyjoy, the Damp-Haired, to be calling forth the drowned god and everything the drowned god can do. Krakens, yes, absolutely. Bring forth whatever will bring the greatest devastation, whatever will bring the greatest chaos. And that, I think, is what is happening here. He's just goading him, but he's trying to do it in a really subtle way. He's goading him to be using all of his last energy to be summoning up whatever his god can bring. So that is, I think, what is going on. Now, in terms of how all of that interacts with the long night, I think, to the most part, I don't think it does. So the Euron has not got the same end game, the same vision for what he wants at the end of all of this as the others do. They're complete opposites. Euron's aim is to destroy everything and then to be king over the ashes. That's what he wants. He wants to kill all of the gods, and then he wants to be the god at the end of it all. He wants to have people worshipping. That's where he's going to. So in terms of the long night, in terms of the others invading, Euron, to start with, geographically, he's at the other end of the continent. But he's not there trying to, yes, he will want to encourage it because it creates extra chaos, but he's not there taking their side. That's not what he's about. So will Euron be a bit of a damp squib? No. Euron is going to be one of the most magnetic, horrific, but charismatic and wonderful characters in the Winds of Winter. He is going to do astonishing things. He is going to destroy so much. He is going to create so much chaos all over the place. He is not going to be a damp squib, but he is not one of the big baddies. This is the Song of Ice and Fire. I think I said this last time. This is my takeaway point on this, is that this is the Song of Ice and Fire. This is not the Song of Ice and Krakens. This is not what we're about here. This is about twin threats who can both destroy humanity. Ice and fire, the others and dragons, and how humanity kind of works its way to stop itself being destroyed by either or both of those things. There is a third baddie going on here. Euron is taking up the Saruman role. He is the person who is, yes, powerful, yes, crazy, yes, pushing his own agenda, and yes, will impact hugely on the plot going forward. But he is not the big baddie. He probably will survive to the very, very end, but that does not make him the big baddie. The big baddies are ice and fire. So that is where I see. I don't think he's going to be a damp squib. I don't think that he's pushing the long night, but I think that he will be sympathetic to the long night happening, to dragons happening, because they're going to create chaos. They're going to destroy people. They're going to do all of the things that he wants. So that is where Euron is going to be. And I can't remember if I've said this on a live stream before or not. I think there is an outside chance that Euron will capture a dragon, and that dragon will burn down the wall because he wants to help the others. I think that there's an outside chance of that. I think that he may well try and create chaos in every part of Westeros, not just the little bit that he's in control of, the little bit that he's closest to. I think that that's entirely possible. But in terms of the imagery, going back to Aemond One Eye, I think it's entirely possible that he ends up in a fight over the God's Eye Lake, dragons against dragons, and he will be, or or his dragon will be defeated that way. So that, I think, is where we're heading with this. Daft Cody, thank you for the super chat, saying, which POV character could Euron possibly kill? I mean, this is a tough one. Well, whether he kills any POV characters is not, for me, the main issue. The issue is, what chaos can he create? Yes, he could kill some POV characters, but the main thing here is about him creating chaos. That is what he wants. We need to break free from this idea that he's some kind of like well thought out plan kind of guy. He is just there trying to create as much of an issue as he probably can all of the time. That's where he is at. He may well kill people, but not necessarily POV characters. Lady Pushkin's saying, could you go over the order of things again, please? Aegon in King's Landing, where will Dany be, Euron, etc. Okay, so I'm happy to do this, and I will also give you your health warning on where I think we're starting to sort of extrapolate from the things that we know. So the things that we know for sure is that the person who claims to be Aegon VI has invaded the Stormlands. He's got a big army with him, the Golden Company. He apparently has claimed Storm's End, which will be a huge victory for him. He has sent out letters asking for support from people. I think that there is a very good chance, here's the point at which we don't know, but I think there's a very good chance that Dawn will come on board, because at some point, Doran Martell is going to get a letter from Meereen, basically saying, well, here's your son. You sent him over to marry Daenerys. She said, no, I'm not going to marry your son. And by the way, the dragons burned him to death. Here's his bones. I think that is going to be enough to push Dawn to support Fagon. There may well be other people who support Fagon. Storm's End is not far from King's Landing. We know that King's Landing is not particularly well defended now, because apparently Mace Tyrell has taken the Tyrell army out of it. We know that there aren't huge amounts of Lannister soldiers there. We know that Varys is working behind the scenes, just disrupting things. I think it seems pretty logical and pretty straightforward that Fagon will take King's Landing. Cersei will have to flee. Cersei flees away. Fagon, probably to Casterly Rock. Fagon is in control of King's Landing. That much I am 90% certain of it happening in the Winds of Winter. At some point, Dany will invade again. We can be reasonably convinced of this fact that she will do that. She will have a couple of mercenary companies. She will have the Dothraki. She will have the Unsullied. But it's going to feel like a foreign invasion, because everybody on her side will be Essosi. They will be people from Essos. So that's where that's coming in. Then we get the confrontation between Dany and Fagon. While that's going on, Cersei has escaped down to Casterly Rock. She's got no allies at all, because pretty much everyone else is allies to someone else. The only person she could possibly ally with is Euron. Euron, meanwhile, has probably realized he's been rebuffed by Daenerys, so that's not a possibility. And he may well see what Qyburn is doing in terms of reanimating the dead, and he may well want a bit of that action. There's something that both of them will want from that alliance. So Cersei and Euron will become allies. Now, I think now we're well into the world of speculation here, but I think that Daenerys will manage to do away with the threat from Fagon, but that's the point at which she will start turning her attention to the others. Then I think that we get Cersei and Euron coming in and retaking King's Landing. So that's what I think is the likely iteration of events when it comes to Euron, and how he manages to sit himself on the Iron Throne at the end of all of these things. Doesn't make him the big baddie, but it makes him the last baddie. Stephen Dylan, I hope I answered your previous super chat to your satisfaction. Good question here, saying a prevailing theory seems to be that Euron will be his own downfall by overreaching with his new abilities. Do you think that may be how he goes down? Possibly. He seems to be led at the moment by the visions he's getting from the Shade of the Evening juice. He had a barrel of it. So the backstory here is that the warlocks from the House of the Undying, if you remember, Dany took a sip of some kind of weird Shade of the Evening juice. Then she got to see all of her visions. Then at the end of it all, Drogon burned the place down. The warlocks there did not like that. They wanted their revenge on Dany, so they set off, some of them in a boat. They took a barrel of their magical juice with them. Euron captured them. Euron, just like he took all 4 of them. We see them again in the Forsaken chapter, and he's got this barrel of magical juice, and he starts drinking it, glugging it down. And he gets visions about the future. What we're told about those visions, though, is that some of them, yes, are visions of the past, some of them are visions of the future, some of them are visions of things that will not be. Now, I think it's probably most likely that he is being driven by visions of things that will not be. That seems to be what is going on here. In terms of him overreaching with his powers, possibly. I think that what we will see is him probably with a dragon, and when he loses that dragon, it actually turns out that he's just a person. He will probably have drunk all of his barrel of sort of the magic juice by that point, and so the Shade of the Evening drink. So by that point, he is just a human. He's a charismatic, he's an astonishingly capable human, but he is just a human. So does that equate to overreaching himself? Perhaps. I mean, if ever you could think of a definition of overreaching yourself, it's that I've decided that I'm a god. It turns out that I'm not. That does sound a bit like it. So yes, he will overreach himself, but perhaps not in as simplistic a way as some people might think. Thassio, thank you for the super chat, saying, I think it will be the fight between the Ice Dead Whites and the Fire Dead, Jon Stoneheart, etc. Yeah, so what the show did, which I don't think was right, was try to set this up as a fight between the living and the dead. I found the irony of Jon saying this to Beric almost too much to take, I have to say, when Jon, who had been dead and was resurrected, was talking to Beric, who had been dead and resurrected 6 times, about, hey, we're on the side of the living against the dead. No, that's not how this is. This is the others trying to gain their revenge in some way. We still haven't got all of the backstory in the books, but that seems to be roughly what's going on against humanity, and particularly against the children of the forest. So that seems to be what's going on there. Some will see this as a battle of fire against ice, and yes, definitely fire is going to be a way to destroy ice, and so Dany will come to the rescue, and I'm sure that Daenerys will, I'm sure that Melisandre will be right there at the forefront of things, but this is not a matter of fire versus ice, in my view. This is a matter of humanity surviving against the incursion of ice and then surviving against the incursion of fire. And the central point of this, it doesn't make him the magnificent hero of all this, but the central point of all this is Jon, who is symbolically ice and fire, born of a Targaryen and a Stark. The imagery all the way through this, George R. R. Martin loves doing symbolism and imagery. He gets the imagery of an ice dragon, ice and fire. He gets the imagery of dragonglass, frozen fire. All the way through, he is like the central point of this. As I say, it doesn't make him the hero. George R. R. Martin is definitely trying to subvert this in some way, but it does make him the central point. So that's my view about where we're at. Connor Shields, thank you so much, saying thanks for everything you do. You're very welcome. And let's have a look. I think I had another super chat from Catherine Forseth. Thank you so much. Saying, to Robert, a man of his word. Thank you. Thanks for coming back and doing this. Do you think the Euron character was in George R. R. Martin's plans from the beginning? He didn't appear in the important prophetic Game of Thrones. I'm going to tie this in actually with a question from one of my patrons, if that's okay. Catherine, so Henning J says, I know from one of your earlier answers that you think the main title of A Song of Ice and Fire implies that Euron cannot be the main antagonist to Daenerys Fire and Jon Ice and Fire. I still wonder whether it could go as far as Euron controlling the ice side. In particular, how likely do you think it could be that Euron will wreak havoc on King's Landing with a stolen dragon and may also destroy Old Town? Okay, so the reason why I'm trying to connect these two is this idea that Euron wasn't part of George R. R. Martin's initial plans. And I think it's always risky trying to get into George R. R. Martin's mind, but I think the answer is he wasn't. For those who aren't aware, when George R. R. Martin started writing these stories, he imagined it as a trilogy. All the way through the first book, he thought of this as a trilogy. There were going to be 3 books. This is going to be a play in 3 acts. And those who kind of study literature and that kind of thing will understand that a 3-act play has to set up the problem in Act 1 in some way in order for it to play out. It plays through in Act 2, and then it reaches its inevitable conclusion in Act 3. The issue with Euron is that he's not in Act 1. He's not even mentioned in Act 1. It's not like there's somebody, Theon could have said something about him. He's not there. We don't get it at all. That's not where we're at. So it's, for me, clear that as George R. R. Martin's original intention was not that Euron was going to be a main part of this. Euron also doesn't appear in Book 2. He gets mentioned in Book 2 a couple of times, but he doesn't appear. It's only later on, as we move through this saga, that Euron first is mentioned and then starts taking a role. So does this mean that he's not going to be the big baddie at the end of it? I think certainly in terms of the original intention, yes. Now, kind of the asterisk on all of this is George R. R. Martin says that he is a gardener writer. This is something that he says many times, that he allows the characters to grow and he lets the story and the characters guide him as he goes. So he's not there, as some writers write a full structure for the entire story and then they just write it based on that structure. George R. R. Martin doesn't do that. He comes up with the characters, he comes up with the plot, he comes up with the scenarios, and then he lets those characters play out. So Euron is not part of the original plan. The fact that he's not part of the original plan implies that he's not part of the final end game. That doesn't mean that he's necessarily not going to be there at the end, but he's not part of the final end game. Henning J, in terms of your question, whether he could control the ice side, I don't think that's the way it is. I think that George R. R. Martin will give us a proper backstory and motivation for the others. One of the things that I and many others were not particularly fans of in the show is the fact that the White Walkers never really got a proper motivation. We never really got to understand exactly what they are wanting other than just to kill all the humans. I think George R. R. Martin is going to give us a lot more of that. And I think for Euron to just come in and take over for them, I don't think that's not going to work. We have to have volition for the others. So that is where we're at with that. In terms of what you were asking, Catherine, whether I think the Euron character was in his plans, well, he might have thought of him from the beginning, but he clearly didn't think that he was going to be the key to the ending. He may well have thought, okay, well, we'll have this character who appears partway through and is quite important, but he never thought that he was going to be key to the ending. LMC, thank you so much for the super chat, saying, listening while I work. Hi, LMC. So no time to think of a question. I want to make sure you know we appreciate your work and content, though. Thank you. I really appreciate that. That's really kind. Thank you. And I hope you're getting some work done despite listening to this. I think I had a couple of other super chats I just want to pick up on. Lady Pushkin saying, if there is no Night King who is creating the White Walkers and raising whites. Yeah, so I think we will get, so the Night King is a character that the showrunners created. Now, they created it, as far as I can tell from what they've said, they created it because they wanted to personalize the creation story. That seems to be what was going on, is that they had this idea that I'm reasonably certain came from George R. R. Martin, that the others, White Walkers, were created by the Children of the Forest as a way of fighting against humanity. And in order for that to work visually, the showrunners thought what they needed to do was create a person. So it wasn't just that there was a magic spell cast and suddenly we get lots of these things. They wanted to create a person, someone that we could see the fear in their eyes as the dragon glass was pushed into their heart. And I understand that. That makes perfect sense. And then they kind of built on that. Once they got this person, they wanted to create this kind of character of the Night King, and they moved on from there. So, I mean, I understand it, where it comes from in trying to transfer from the written word to a lot more of a visual medium. That's what was going on. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not an original other in the books. George R. R. Martin was very clear that the Night King is not the Night's King, and he prefers his version, which is fine. I think the hint there is that we are not going to get a leader of the others. The others are going to come at us as a force which, although we will understand a lot more about them, will still seem otherworldly in some way. They are the Fae. They are the fairies of myth. If you've ever read any classic sort of fantasy fiction, particularly from the first half of last century, when you get the Fae who come in and take babies who have their own world. Incidentally, that is fantastic. If you've ever read it, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell is Susanna Clarke, fantastic story, which kind of captures that kind of feel of what the fairy world is like. Now we have fairies as this kind of like Tinkerbell kind of idea, but in classical fantasy fiction, they aren't. They are mysterious, they are deep, they are different, they are other. And that is the feeling that George R. R. Martin is trying to capture here. So what I'm kind of saying is that the Night King does not need to exist in order for this threat to feel a personal threat in the books. He might create a leader. We don't know. We simply don't have huge amounts of information yet. The Winds of Winter, out of everything we will discover, I think the thing which will be most interesting in terms of theorizing will be what we discover about the others. He's told us, we're going to go further north than we ever have done before, which is mind-blowing. Who's going to take us that far north? Bran seems to have got far enough north and isn't moving any further. Are we going to see another POV character take us that far north? I don't know. Okay, so Vlad Diserlila, I'm not even going to try and pronounce your surname, apologies, saying, so if Euron isn't the big bad, pardon me, big bad end guy, who or what do you think the big bad end guy is? The structure of this, and I've talked about the ending of A Song of Ice and Fire a few times, I would, if you want my full view on this, or my current best full view on this, I did a video which it was kind of like marked up as a Lord of the Rings video, so Song of Ice and Fire fans may well have missed it. I did a video about a month ago called The Scouring of the Shire. And George R. R. Martin, when he's asked about the end of A Song of Ice and Fire, he says that he wants it to be bittersweet. We all know he says he wants it to be bittersweet, but he doesn't stop there. He explains what he means by bittersweet. He says he wants it to be bittersweet like the end of The Lord of the Rings is bittersweet. And some of this, I mean, to start with, people who've just watched the films or something go, Lord of the Rings isn't bittersweet. The bad guys got defeated, the good guys won. What's bittersweet about that? But he's looking at the characters. He's looking at the fact that Frodo, despite winning the victory, is changed and can't enjoy this new world that he has saved. He's looking at the fact that the Ents never find the Entwives. He's looking at the fact that Galadriel and the elves diminish and head into the west, having done everything that they should have done. There's sadness locked into this, as well as victory. And he says, in particular, he specifically mentions it, he wants the feel of the end of A Song of Ice and Fire to reflect the feel of the penultimate chapter of The Lord of the Rings, which is the Scouring of the Shire. So if you want to get more detail on that, go and have a look at that video. But the sort of the high-level stuff there is that all of the characters that we know and love, they have done all that they need to do. They've saved the day and all the rest of it, but then they come back home and there is a final thing they have to deal with. That, in The Lord of the Rings, is Saruman. Saruman, who was defeated, but he's still alive, and the guys who are there, who were broken, who were proving their mettle through all of this, they get to have this last opportunity to save home. Not just like this, let's save the universe, let's save the world kind of big things. It's about saving their own home. And that seems to be the feel that George R. R. Martin wants to have in the end of A Song of Ice and Fire. So when I say Euron's not the big bad end guy, I think he is the end guy. I think he is Saruman in the Shire. I think he will end up in King's Landing needing to be defeated. But that doesn't make him the big bad end guy. This is the Song of Ice and Fire. The two things that humanity has to deal with are ice and fire. And those are the two big baddies that have to be dealt with. That doesn't mean that I think that Daenerys is the baddie, but I think that fire as a concept, the dragons as a concept, are a thing which could destroy humanity and have to be pushed back in some way, in the same way that ice and the others need to be pushed back. So that's my sort of overall take on the ending, in terms of who will be the big baddie. Let's have a quick flick through. We've got Daniel O'Malley saying, what would you consider the current acts 1, 2, and 3? Oh, this is a very good question. So, I said earlier on in the stream that I think that George R. R. Martin set up book 1 as his act 1, and then only when he was working his way through book 2 that it started to be apparent that this expanded out. My general take is that Act 2, classically Act 2 in a 3-act play, is the playing out of all of this to reach the point where at Act 3 we have the denouement. Now, Act 2 seems to carry everything up to the point at which Ice and Fire, who were introduced in Act 1 as being the big baddies, Ice in the prologue, Fire at the epilogue, effectively, of book 1, that they bookend book 1. We get introduced to the others and dragons in book 1. But Act 2 is the playing out of that, and how people react to, ignore, mobilize, and all the rest of it to these threats. And a lot of it is ignoring. Act 3, I think, is probably effectively the final book, because as I see it, the most likely end point of the Winds of Winter is the wall comes down and the others invade, and Daenerys and the dragons reach Westeros. So Act 2 is the playing out of everything there, and that's the bit that George R. R. Martin kind of ballooned out by adding in extra things all the time. And the moment that he carried on, he added in so much stuff that he then had to take a huge amount of time to bring it back down to something manageable for Act 3, which is when these things finally hit. So that's, in terms of a 3-act structure, that's where I think we're at. Stephen Dillon saying, do you think there'll be a keystone army like in the show? Kill one, kill all kind of thing? No, I don't think it's going to be exactly like that, but I think that the way that the show tried to explain it, I think, gives us a hint as to what the actual answer is going to be. So the way that the show tried to explain it was, you decide how well they put this across. I have my views. The way they tried to explain it was that the White Walkers, the Night King, were created by an act of magic. The act of magic was some magic stuff happened. The Night King had dragon glass pushed into his heart in front of a weirwood tree. That was the magic. The secret to destroying the others was to undo that magic. And the way to undo that magic was to push Valyrian steel into the Night King's heart in front of a weirwood tree. So it's basically undoing the thing that happened already. Dragon glass in front of a weirwood tree into the heart of the Night King was undone by Valyrian steel into the heart of the Night King in front of a weirwood tree. That was what they were trying to say. If you watch all of their commentary on this, they don't talk about killing the Night King. They talk about undoing the magic of the Night King and the White Walkers. And I think that is the important point here. George R. R. Martin, I suspect it won't be just a battle. It won't be who's the best assassin. That's not what this is about. It will be about undoing the magic that created the others. So I don't think we've got quite enough information yet to be 100% certain on how that works, but that certainly seems to be the key that we're working towards. All of the things surrounding it, like Arya and the Night King and all of that, that is show only stuff. But the fact that perhaps we have to undo the magic that created them, that will be the solution to all of this. I think I have caught up on my super chat now. Annabelle A. Morales Sanchez saying some magic stuff happened. This is the quality insight I'm here for. Yeah, well, that was where the show went. And what I'll always be honest when we know stuff and when we don't know stuff. And what we do not know yet is George R. R. Martin's backdrop to the others. And so I'm not going to pretend that we have that information. So what we do seem to have is a very clear hint that the others, based on symbolism and all the rest of it, the others are directly connected in with the children of the forest. And as you asked, I'll go down this. They created them as a fighting force against humanity. That seems to be the clear point here. So the children of the forest were not as strong as humans. They did not multiply as fast as humans did, and they had worse weapons, basically. So what they did was they created the others. Now the others were humans and had this chance. They were stronger than humans. They used humans' numbers against them because every time they killed a human, they could raise that human who then flipped sides. But all through this, the children of the forest seemed to have this idea that they needed to have a sort of a fail-safe here. And so the children of the forest seem to have had two fail-safes. The first thing is that the thing that we know that the whites, the others, are vulnerable to is dragonglass, which is what the children of the forest used as their weapons. And there is more than a hint that they can't cross running water. And where is it that we find all of the children of the forest's main places? The Isle of Faces is on an island in the middle of water. Where is all the dragonglass? It's on Dragonstone, on an island surrounded by water. And if you want some extra tinfoil, where is Dawn, the magical sword that's been around for thousands of years? It's in Starfall, an island surrounded by water. So that they sort of built in these kind of fail-safes into the design, but it was designed to counteract all of humanity's strength. That's where we seem to be going. Okay, so I've got a question from the second sister over on Patreon saying, let's look at the dream the damp hair has in the Forsaken chapter. This is the pre-release chapter from the Winds of Winter. Do you think the shadowy woman is an actual woman, or does she represent something like the woman representing Westeros in the House of the Undying? Well, I had a quick look for this because I thought people might find it quite interesting. Let me just read. This is the bit of the or an extract from the Forsaken chapter, the pre-release chapter from Winds of Winter. This is from the point of view of Euron. Euron has force-fed him the Shade of the Evening drink, so he's having visions against his will. The dreams were even worse the second time. He saw the longships of the Ironborn adrift and burning on a boiling, blood-red sea. He saw his brother on the Iron Throne again, but he was no longer human. He seemed more than man, a monster fed by a kraken of the deep, his face a mass of writhing tentacles. Beside him stood a shadow in woman's form, long and tall and terrible, her hands alive with pale white fire. Dwarves capered for their amusement, male and female, naked and misshapen, locked in carnal embrace, biting and tearing at each other, as Euron and his mate laughed and laughed and laughed. So that's the vision that we have, that we're working to. Now, the question is whether the shadowy woman is an actual woman, or does she represent something like the woman representing Westeros in the House of the Undying. I should probably say I had a fantastic chat with Grey, this Grey area, just yesterday actually, about the visions, Dany's visions in the House of the Undying. That's part of my new series of videos on Secrets of Westeros, where we're looking at various places and peoples that are kind of mysterious. Now, in that, she came up with this idea that I think I'm now fully bought into, which is that the first few visions that Daenerys has in the House of the Undying happen in time order, from most recent all the way through to the past. Now, that seems to imply that the first vision, the vision that is there of a woman with dwarves capering around her and doing bad things to her, is something in the future. Now, this ties in with what we've got from this vision, because this vision, again, has a woman, a beautiful woman with dwarves capering around. I think it's entirely likely now that these are the same thing. They're seeing the same thing from slightly different angles. So whereas this vision seems to think that, you know, maybe the Euron figure and the woman are together and laughing and all the rest of it, actually what's happening is that it's not. The woman is being devoured by the things that she thinks that she's laughing at. That, I think, it's to me becoming increasingly likely that that's what's happening. The two visions are the same. So in answer to your question, the second sister, do you think the shadowy woman is an actual woman, or does she represent something? I'm now starting to think that she is an actual woman. And I think the actual woman that she is probably Cersei, who is almost certainly going to get together with Euron. And almost certainly they will move across to King's Landing, and Euron will seat himself on the Iron Throne. So that's where I'm at with that at the moment. I think that the visions are still very vague. They're still very uncertain about exactly everything that they mean. But I think that they're both talking about the same thing. The imagery is so similar that I think it certainly makes a lot of sense. Sean M saying, because Dragonbinder killed the guy who blew it, how do you think Euron will use it and survive it? He's given Dragonbinder to Victarion. Victarion has learned that, you know, if you blow it, you die. So he's got 3 people, sailors, suckers, to blow it for him. So that's what's going to happen. I think he has already bonded with it through some kind of magical bonding. So when it is blown, then the connection is not between whoever blew it and the dragon, or even between Victarion and the dragon, but Euron and the dragon. So I think that is what is going on there. Euron is never personally going to blow that horn. Okay, let's. Geeky Photos asking, why would Cersei trust Euron at all? She doesn't trust anybody. I think that's right, and I think that she won't trust him necessarily. But what we're going to have is a situation for her where she's going to escape King's Landing because she's basically being completely outmaneuvered. I think that before King's Landing falls, I think that she will do whatever the book equivalent of her blowing up the Great Sept is, which will have the impact of alienating herself to the Faith of the Seven and, of course, the House Tyrell. Now, that means that when she escapes King's Landing, no one, literally no one, is on her side. The North, the Starks aren't on House Lannister's side. Vale of Arryn is under Littlefinger's control. He's not going to be siding with her. The Riverlands technically are, but basically the Riverlands are a big war zone at the moment. They're not really under anyone's control. Then you work your way around the Crown Lands. No, those are Fagon's going to have control of them through his John Connington, his Hand of the King. Dawn, as I've already said, I suspect Dawn's going to announce for them as well. We then move round to the Reach, and clearly the Tyrells are not going to be supporting her either. So who is there that she could turn to? Who is it that she could possibly think might be able to claim her kingdom back for her? The only answer are the Ironborn. So that is why I think that she will need support. I think that this will make sense for her. I don't think that means that she will trust Euron, but I think that she will ally herself with him. And it will be two people who do not necessarily trust each other, but they see the advantages in doing it. Andrew Kay saying, looking forward to seeing Lady Grey here in that series. Yes, so that's going to be a week on Wednesday. This Wednesday, I've got Bookshelf Stud from Maester Monthly, who's going to be coming on and talking about the Night Fort, which is a fantastically, really mysterious place. Fantastic place. They didn't really focus on it on the show, but in the books, this is the ancient home of the Night's Watch, and this is where all of the legends that we get of the wall come from, and fundamentally this is where the Night's King was. We get the Black Gate, and we get so many amazing things, and I think we came out with a really good theory out of that one, so do check that one. That's happening on Wednesday. I think between us we came up with a fantastic theory about what's going to be happening in Jon's first chapter of the Winds of Winter. Do check that one out when it comes out on Wednesday. Morally saying, what kind of role do you think Theon and Asha or Yara are going to play in Euron's final defeat? Do you see them ruling the Iron Islands jointly at the end of A Dream of Spring? Yeah, so I think Asha and Yara, Theon and Asha will... they're not going to play a role in his defeat, I don't think, at least not a huge one. But when Euron is gone, the question is, who should rule the Iron Islands? And they are the two standout candidates, it has to be said. My own personal favourite theory is that clearly Theon doesn't want it, but he is a figurehead of sorts. Asha does want it, but I think that there's a good chance that she will somehow lose her tongue. That seems to be kind of, I mean, we thought it was going to happen in the show. It didn't happen in the show, but that kind of makes sense. And so I do wonder whether they will jointly rule, because she will rule, but she won't be able to speak, but he will be able to speak on her behalf. And so that gives him this kind of role going forward as being not the person he thought he was going to be, but the person who enables the actually the best person to rule. And that for me, that works perfectly as an ending to his story and also to her story, because she was the best candidate. It's only that Euron came out being all crazy and all the rest of it. My last question from my patrons. So this is a good point to drop any final questions into the chat. My last question from my patrons is from Anne. I always say Clough. I think it's Clo. Apologies if I mispronounce it again. Saying, hi, Robert. I wonder what you think will be the end for Euron. I cannot see him joining in with Team Life to fight the others. I also can't imagine he goes out in a sword fight with Jaime. What do you think? So, I think there's two possible ways that he could end here. I think the first way is if he gets this dragon, if he does follow this kind of like template of Aemond One Eye, that he does die in a dragon fight over the God's Eye Lake. That is entirely possible. That might happen. But I have a feeling that he might pull himself out of that. He might survive that. If he does, then when Jaime gets down to King's Landing, as he will eventually, what will his reaction be to Euron? Euron is this person who has taken Cersei, who Jaime, he does love. Yes, he's got complicated feelings and all the rest of it, but he does, I mean, a sister and much more. He does love her. She's the mother of his children and all the rest of it. And he will see that Euron is the person who has taken her to a level that she otherwise would never have been to. I think that the Cersei Euron axis in the last two books is going to head all the way through to be a mirror of the Night's King and Night's Queen. I think we're talking undeath, Qyburn. There's no way Qyburn's going to stop at just creating the zombie mountain. There's going to be way more. There's going to be like an undead army. I think that there's a very good chance that Cersei herself may effectively become sort of undead in a way. So I think Jaime will see what has happened to Cersei, and he will not blame her. He will blame Euron. So I think that there is a chance. There's two opportunities for him to die. I think one is in a kind of like a dragon battle, if we are going to take that Aemond One Eye kind of idea. The other is Jaime will see what he has done, and they will try and take some kind of vengeance for it. So those are the two opportunities that I see. I don't think a sword fight is necessarily it. I think the show made it a little bit of they underplayed it a lot. But that's because they underplayed the character of Euron. If Euron was as horrific and charismatic and crazy and all of the things that book Euron was, then and that played across into Cersei, then I think we will understand Jaime's motivations in killing him. But as it was, we didn't really. That's why it felt a little bit underwhelming, let's say. Shannon Patch, thank you so much for the super chat, saying no question. I always enjoy your content. I'm glad I got to catch it live today. Well, I'm glad thank you so much, by the way. I'm glad there are some people who managed to catch this one. As I say, I'm going to try and do a random extra bonus live stream about once a month from now on, just at a different time. Do let me know what times work for you. Probably not in the chat, but in the comments below is probably I'll have a flick through them, see what times work for people. And we'll go from there. But I'm glad that moving it to a slightly different time does allow extra people to watch these. Chris of Oldstones, thank you. And I should say moderators, actually, as I've got Chrissy there. I think we've got Chrissy, Crocking Tacos, and Andrew K. I've seen all of you in the chat today. Thank you, guys. I hugely appreciate what you do. Moderators, are some of the most underthanked people in this community, making sure that the chat just stays a safe place for everyone. So thank you guys. I hugely appreciate what you do. It's an immense service, not just to me, but to the people who are watching this. So thank you so much. A question from Nicola Jurican. Hi there, Nicola, saying, what do you think about as long as House Stark exists, so will White Walkers? I mean, it's possible it's the other way around. As long as the White Walkers exist, or the others exist, that House Stark does. But I think that the better way to conceptualize this is that House Stark has been set up as opposition to the others. That's what's going on in the crypts. I've done a few videos about it. If you've not checked them out, please do. But I think that House Stark is effectively humanity's defense against the others. That's what they've been set up to do. That's why there must always be a Stark in Winterfell to make sure that they always stay there, and so on. So that seems to be what's going on. When the others have gone, is there a need for the Starks? No, the need has gone. So potentially that gets rid of the Starks, but that doesn't mean the Starks are gone. They could carry on afterwards. It's just that the Weirwood Network's plan for the Starks has come to fruition. So that's where we are at. Let's have a quick flick through the chat. A few random questions. So Johnny Skinwalker saying, I have a theory that Euron will use magic to bring back the 13th commander of legend, who was the Night's King. A good theory. My take is more that Euron will sort of become like him. The imagery we have, I was reading from the Forsaken chapter earlier, the imagery we have there of him and his queen, this kind of like white, deathly white queen, that kind of matches with the Night's King and the Night's Queen. So I think it's more that he is going to echo it rather than he will physically bring back the 13th commander. Lady Pushkin saying, is the grey area thing something we can listen to? Yeah, so this is in part, it's going to be one of my series of videos. If you've not caught them, I've done 3 so far. I did them with I'm trying to remember now. So Matt, Gen Magician, I did one about faceless men. I did one with Disputed Lands, Amanda was talking about Old Valyria, and I did one with Professor Castle himself talking about Winterfell. They are about an hour long each time. That's what I've been trying to aim for, and they are effectively pre-recorded live streams. So it's me talking to somebody else, working our way through the issues, speculations, and all the rest of it about particular places and people. So that's what it is. As always, patrons will get early access to the audio of that. I will upload that for you before it goes live, and then it will appear here as a YouTube video. So that's what my plan is there. As I say, I've done 3. I've got another 3 definitely happening, and I'm sure I will find a few more. I was asking my patrons just the other day what other issues they want to be covering. Have a quick flick through. Oh, is San Rixian there in the chat? San Rixian, I was wearing one of your t-shirts on my live stream the other day, and then I suddenly realized that you couldn't see it was your t-shirt because the logo was down below me. So it was there. For those who do not know, San Rixian is one of the excellent sort of artists we have in this community. Hopefully one of the moderators will be able to put a link to her work there in the chat. So please do go and check that out. Let's just have a quick look if we've got any more questions to pick up. Ray L saying, what do you think is the significance of the hinted connection between Euron and Bloodraven? Do you think Bloodraven, or at least Bloodraven's confluence, shaped Euron at all? Yeah, I talked about this in the first part of this live stream, if that's how we're going to sort of refer to it. I won't go over all of that ground again now, but yes, it seems to me to be reasonably clear that Bloodraven did reach out to Euron. The links are very strong there. The idea, when he says, I dreamt that I could fly, the fact that he's got this, the crow's eye, just the one eye, and all the rest of it, all seem to kind of hint at this connection. But I suspect because he was on the Iron Islands, because there aren't any weirwood trees, that connection didn't go anywhere. So Euron's there with slightly awakened magic, but nowhere to go with it. What does he do? Well, what Bran did when his magic was slightly awakened was he went and Bloodraven called him up and he had the weirwood paste. Euron goes over and has the Shade of the Evening drink, and they are very, very, very deliberately presented as being opposites, or the Shade of the Evening tree is seen as a kind of a warped and degenerated version of the weirwood. So that seems to be what was going on there. He wasn't a disciple or an acolyte or connected to Bloodraven, but Bloodraven did reach out. That's my general view on it. Okay. I think let me do one or possibly a couple more questions. Andrew K saying, I think Bloodraven opened Euron's third eye and opened him up to Arcana and higher mysteries. Very dangerous domino effect given the mind he was playing around in. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's exactly what he did. So he opened him up to all of this, but then didn't follow up on it. And that's a very dangerous thing to be going on with. I think as this is... I got one more super chat. Always the case. Just before I'm about to sign off, I get another super chat, another question. Ben Jackson. So Catherine Furseth, thank you so much for the super chat. Picking up on a question from Ben Jackson. I love it when people do this. Picking up on questions from other people. Will Littlefinger cross paths with Euron since he seems such a potent threat? I think the answer is no to this. So I will get to Littlefinger and what is Littlefinger's plan in one of my videos at some point. But basically, Littlefinger's plan is to create a block of bits of the Seven Kingdoms who he has control of, and then personally marry Sansa. That's the plan. Now, that means that he has got control of the Vale at some point now. He's going to try and through Sansa, he has got some sort of influence in the Riverlands, because obviously Sansa is related in with the ruling family there, the Tullys, through her mother. And I think that he is going to take her up north with the view to her being, in the absence of Bran Rickon, which seems to be the case, and with Jon not being legitimized, he will claim that she is the rightful heir of Winterfell, which kind of makes sense. And so that seems to be his plan, is that he's going to do that. The plan is not going to work. We'll be very clear about this, but that seems to be his plan. But it keeps him in the northern half of Westeros. Euron, for the most part, I suspect, will be in the southern part of Westeros. He certainly starts off in the southern part. So I don't think the two of them will come into contact all that much. And I think Littlefinger, thankfully, will die when he gets up to Winterfell. So I think that's the main thing there. Andrew Kay saying, do you think the impending blood sacrifice could be for the cataclysm of Old Town in such close proximity? Well, I just want to, as it sort of it sprang out at me as I was reading this, the Forsaken chapter, when we had that vision, and Euron sees the long ships of the Ironborn adrift and burning on a boiling blood-red sea. That, for me, sounds like the aftermath of a huge naval battle, which is what I think we're going to see in the Winds of Winter, this thing that Euron is basically setting up. So there will be huge amounts of blood sacrifices there. Is this going to be the cataclysm of Old Town? I mean, I think probably not in that battle, but I think that there's a very good chance that what he's going to do is he's going to create chaos in one way, shape, or form. He's hoping that enough blood in the water will bring the Krakens. He's hoping that the priests and the magic users that he's attached to the prows of his boats will be calling forth whatever things that they call forth. He's been hoping that he might be able to get a dragon all the way across. He is trying to create chaos. And yeah, next in his vision after this big battle at sea is going to be Old Town. I'm absolutely certain of that. And that will have extra chaos because the high towers, they're also magic-y people, and they will try and defend the city. And obviously the maesters, although they are trying to build a world without magic, they've got a huge amount of knowledge there as well, and they are not going to go easily. So I think that what we see the build up to is the sea battle, which is going to be the launching of the chaos. And then I think after that, Old Town will be enveloped in the chaos. So it's, I think the short answer is yes, but probably not in the same battle. Okay, I think with that, I am going to draw this to a close because this was the second of a long part. And I've been talking about Euron, I reckon, for about 4 hours, which is enough for anyone, I'm sure. Okay, guys, thank you so much. I've hugely appreciated the extra questions. Euron is a fan. I say 4 hours is enough for anyone. I could talk about Euron all day. He's a fantastic character. If you want to see more of these live streams, a link will be appearing somewhere around here in a few moments. If you want to support this channel, if you want to get access to some of the benefits of that my patrons get, like getting priority on questions here, all questions that my patrons come up with, I will try my very best to answer all of them on these live streams. There will be a link appearing somewhere here if you would like to do that. Guys, thank you so much. This was a bonus live stream. The main live stream will be happening as usual on Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Take care, everyone, and I will see you again soon.